Hi, Bob Ward here for Above the Bar. Now you can see I'm in the editing room today putting together something particularly special, I think. We've all had to deal with lawyers, and usually from the other side of the desk, the guest side. However, what is it like to be a lawyer? What is it like to run a law firm? Besides the fact that you have to go to law school and understand the law, you also have to know how to run a business. As a matter of fact, even if you're not interested in opening a law practice, if you're interested in starting a business, I think you'll find this kind of interesting. We have David Fisher, who is a prominent New York City attorney, and he's going to be discussing this with Alicia Backus, who is interviewing him. So let's tune in and see what it's like to run a business, and specifically a law firm.
Hello, welcome. My name is Alicia Backus, and thanks for joining us. Today we have David Fisher, who is with Fisher Byrialsen Chrysler LLC, who practices law in New York City and New Jersey.
That's right.
And we're going to talk today about criminal law.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
We're glad that you're here. I guess you have your own firm that you had started. Do you want to, give us a little bit about your background and how you got into criminal law, and then also how you started your own firm?
Sure. In college, I majored in criminal justice, and it was really the first time I probably ever took any interest in school. Before that, I was never really into it. I had this professor who was an FBI guy, and all of a sudden, I really found something that I could latch onto and was interested in. And I knew from that point on that I wanted to do criminal law. I was just sure of it, in some capacity or another. Had some internships, DA's office, public defender's office, and just really liked the idea of it. I liked doing trials. I liked talking to clients, being involved in people's lives in these crazy situations. Mm-hmm. I mean, now with the work that I do, and my wife does it as well, every day we come home or you go to some family party, you have all these stories and these crazy things coming up all the time. And that's my life, and it's exciting. There's always something going on. I mean, it can be a lot of pressure, it can be crazy too. But, I'm just so glad I went in that path, and I'm doing something that I love, and it's something that keeps my heart beating and is exciting. And so anyway, went to law school here. Got a job right at a law school at the public defender's office right across the street. I've been in this neighborhood now since 2002. Stuck over here.
It's a good area.
Yeah, it's nice.
You can't argue with that.
Right. And I live in Hoboken, so not far away. Good commute. And I was at the public defender's office, and I loved it. It's perfect. I mean, it's filled with people who share, I think, the same values as me, the same morals. They're looking to help people who are in trouble. Looking to see the real person and not the crime, not the offender, not the rap sheet. Mm-hmm. I got a lot of good experience, did a lot of trials, learned from a lot of really smart people over there. It's a really good office and a great place to work. And then a fellow employee at the public defender's office, my wife, Jane Byrialsen, we weren't married at the time, decided to go off and start our own practice. We did. We ended up getting married. And now we have another partner who works with us too, David Chrysler, and soon to be, we have one associate and soon to be 3 associates and a secretary. So starting to be an actual firm, I guess.
So how do you think your, job as an attorney is different going from, public defender representing indigent people to representing clients who are paying you, on an hourly basis? Do you think that it's different at all, or?
I mean, there's a lot of differences, sort of the day-to-day life from being at the public defender's office to going into private practice. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest differences is In the public defender's office, I had a lot more cases, right? Maybe I had an average of 110 cases or something like that. So you're just always juggling all that stuff. It's crazy and it's overwhelming. You probably can't give as much attention as you would like to each case. I mean, you definitely can.
Right, and that's always an assumed role. You know,
Right.
in public defender, everybody is overworked, and not that they don't love what they do, but you do have a lot of caseloads, and there's a lot of people that need your assistance and legal advice, and
Right. I mean, I like to think that one of the things I was good at, and I think one of the things that makes somebody in that position can still do a good job is really to prioritize. I mean, things that are going to trial, obviously, the more serious cases, I mean, some things then get hurt because of that. Some of the more minor stuff, you can't keep up with everything if you're going to do a really good job on some other stuff. But now the difference is you're in private practice, and all right, you have less cases, and you could focus theoretically more time on each, but there's also all the business stuff you have to deal with. Paying the rent, getting an office space, hiring people, not hiring people, trying to figure out where that sweet spot is to have enough people that you have the help that you need, but you're still making money. Health insurance, benefits, trying to save for retirement, office supplies,
list goes
like
on.
all these things, right? So now you got to deal with all these things, and thank God my wife is better than I am, and she always kills me and cries her because we don't do enough of that stuff. But we still do a lot, and it takes up a lot of your time. But just in terms of the representation of clients, I'm the same person. I'm the same lawyer I was then. I'm more experienced now, but I represent people who are indigent now still. I get paid by the city to do it. I did actually have a pro bono homicide case that I took on, just finished last year, and it had been going on for 3 years. So very rarely I do pro bono stuff, but I do represent indigent clients, get paid by the city, get paid by the federal government to do it, and I'm the same lawyer that I am with private clients.
Do you think you're perceived as the same lawyer from the client's perspective, or how?
No, I don't think so. I mean, sometime in the beginning, the answer is in the beginning, no. And once you get to know the client and you show them what you're about and you show them that you're willing to fight for them, and even the little things like
DUI.
a client who's in jail. No, I mean little things you do for the client. Like a client who's in jail asks you to please call my grandmother and ask her to feed my cat or whatever. And you follow up on that thing. And you follow up on getting his clothes from one location to another. Little stupid things. You're not even being a lawyer, right? You're just being a person who's promising to help someone, and you do it and you deliver. Then you gain the level of trust and respect from these people. But when you first meet, say, an indigent criminal defendant, sometimes they perceive you as, you're not a paid lawyer. Meanwhile, I am in other contexts, but you're not a paid lawyer. I'm not paying you. Therefore, I don't think you're going to do a good job for me. I think you're working with the DA or for the DA. And you try not to get insulted by that, because that's not how you are.
Right.
You're going to work just as hard for this person as you are for everybody else, but you also have to understand why they might think that. It's just a weird psychological phenomenon.
Yeah, and
if you're
also,
not paying for something, you don't think you're going to get as good if you had paid for it.
Right, but also you don't know the perspective that these clients are coming from. Maybe they know somebody that didn't get good representation, or maybe they were one of the cases. It's like similar to child welfare. They were one of the cases that fell through the cracks, and there was some kind of abuse or negligence. And same thing with this. Maybe their friend had a case and it wasn't dealt with, so they feel you're not going to represent me in the same aspect as if I could have somebody privately, because I would be paying them for the service that they're giving me, and I know that I would be getting the service that I expect. Whereas, they should be expecting to get this good service anywhere, no matter if they're being represented by a public defender or if they're representing by private counsel.
Right, and they may have had bad experiences before, because a lot of the clients I get, it's not their first time being arrested, right?
Repeat offenders.
Right, and they may have had a bad experience with a public defender before. Maybe that person was overworked. Maybe that person happened not to be a good lawyer. Maybe that person, for whatever reason, in this case, had a lot of things going on in their life at the time. Or maybe there was just a perceived failure in that case, and maybe the guy was overwhelmingly guilty. Who knows?
Right.
But a lot of times they come in, and I get the biggest problems, I think, with people who have been through the system many, many times, and they sort of know what the system is like, and they know better than the lawyer, and they've done a lot of research in the jail library, and why aren't you putting in this motion or this motion? And sometimes you have a tough time with that. But you get some pretty demanding and tough and sometimes wacky clients who pay you too. I mean, some of our toughest clients have been ones that paid us, and by toughest I mean just constant barrage of emails, calls, expectations, and just all sorts of things. So I mean, it can be tough in both contexts, really.
So how do you deal with that in terms of being able to time manage, since you're your own firm now? There's nobody telling you what to do. You have to know, okay, well, this is how we're going to manage things and this is how we prioritize. And now you said you have associates, so you can, split up the work and things that need to be done. Do you think that in terms of, I guess with experience comes knowing how much time a case will take, how much time to dedicate to it, how much, I don't know, outside investigation it's going to take? Do you think that differs with the work that you used to do on, like, let's say a typical robbery case, between you as a public defender and you as a private lawyer?
I think in both cases, it's always to some extent about establishing the relationship early on. And to do that, you have to do things that are going to make the client believe in you. Mm-hmm. I believe in myself, right? I believe in my wife's work. I believe in David Kreiser's work. I know that we get very good results all the time and don't settle for anything less than that,
Right.
The clients don't know that. Maybe they know that they've heard from someone else who's had a good experience with us and they got recommended to us, so we sort of have some built-in credibility there. Mm-hmm. But they don't know your level of commitment until you show it to them. So if you really give a lot of attention in the beginning, if you really do a lot of important things in the beginning and say, hey, look, I've already been to the scene, I've taken photographs, I've spoken to this witness, I've gotten this videotape, I've done all these things already. Right in the beginning, they can say, wow, this guy knows what he's doing, he's working hard for me, he's responding to my calls, he's really on top of it. I trust this. I'm starting to trust this person. Mm-hmm. And then you can get a lot more slack. And if you don't call them back for a couple of days, nobody's going to be jumping up and down. They say, I know he's doing okay. Mm-hmm. So I think establishing that in the beginning is really important. And not only is that helpful for establishing a good rapport with the client, but it's usually helpful for the case because you're going to get a jump on the prosecutor. And you're going to get the evidence before it's stale, and you're going to talk to witnesses before they forget, and you're going to get videotapes that would have been destroyed otherwise. So, and I think, unfortunately, maybe when I was at the public defender's office, with the caseload that I had, you wouldn't always have time to get to all that stuff as quickly as you would like to. Mm-hmm. That being said, there was a built-in system where you have investigators, and you could farm that stuff out to them, write up requests for them. So, there was checks on that kind of stuff. How
long was like an average case in the defender's office versus, I know a lot of times private practice, it's you represent a client on one thing and then, they bring other things to you. Maybe you don't do matrimonial work, but then, you have a good client that comes to you with a matrimonial case. When you work for the public defender's office, it's like one and done. You do the case and then it's on to the next one.
Most of the time it'd be one and done, but then there's a good number of cases where you have the one case with the client, everything's going well, you're working towards this great disposition, or you have a really good trial case, and then boom, he gets arrested again. Right, for something similar or the same thing, and now you have two cases. And somehow you miraculously convince the judge, this guy needs to stay out of jail, no bail for him, come on, leave him out, he's a good kid, he's young, whatever the case is, and everything's going fine, and maybe you're going to have a disposition on both cases, or maybe one's triable and you get a disposition on the other. Then all of a sudden there's a third case. So, I had a guy recently actually with this was a private case, so it happens in both contexts. Some of the best private clients are these repeat offenders, right?
Of course,
Or repeat personal injury people. You get a guy who got hit by a car, and then all of a sudden he's in a car accident, and then he's going to slip and fall. It's crazy how many. My partner's doorman has got him like 4 cases already from himself. This guy's constantly getting injured. I don't know how it happens.
The other good thing is you already built that rapport. So the client, trusts you.
You don't
have to go through that beginning phase where, I'm trying to fight to get good information from you, truthful information from you. You're trying to trust me and trust that I'm going to take that information and help you with it instead of hurt you. So I mean, in a way, it is good that you have repeat clients because you already have that established relationship, and then you don't have to go through a lot of the stuff in the beginning of having to build rapport, which is, I mean, I think everything about being an attorney is about rapport and about relationships. I mean, there's an entire course about relationships and confidentiality and what is okay and what you're allowed to do and how much you protect your client.
Right, and I think most of that just comes from listening, just listening to what the client wants, and not, we as attorneys, I think, have the bad habit of talking too much. Because I don't know, we know a lot of stuff about some stuff, or know a little stuff about a lot of stuff, whatever it is. And I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or a comfort thing, but we like to talk, we like to, maybe it's our jobs, it's sort of our jobs to talk, but you really get the best out of your clients, I think, when you just say, what do you mean? Or explain. Or, wow, that sounds like you're having a problem with this. Tell me more about that. And you just listen, and they really appreciate that, because especially the ones who have had attorneys before, they're like, wow, this guy's not like the other guys I've had. He's listening to me. He actually is hearing what I'm saying, so that's really important.
Yeah. In terms of that you were just saying about, listening to clients, how often do you find that a goal or a preferred outcome that you want for a case is different than what the client wants, whether it's working at the public defender's office or now? I mean, I know that...
I mean, usually our interests will coincide, because in addition to wanting these clients to, get the best possible result, or I want to help them with what they want, I also kind of like to win. Right, that's important to me. And if I win in the case and I get everything I want, usually the client gets everything they want. So it's that's two things that if they meet up, it's a good thing. Like my desire to win in things and be competitive. I'm not that competitive of a person in life. Like I play a board game or a basketball game, I'm like slamming down the thing, right? But for some reason, when it comes to this job and doing this kind of stuff, I get really competitive about it, and I don't like cheat or try to do anything against the rules of ethics or shady or sneaky, but I want to win, and I don't want a bad result for the client ever. So usually those two things coincide. I mean, you get clients who, I have a case now where the government, it's a federal case, the government is offering the client, or was offering the client, a plea deal where he would receive somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 years in prison. And you say, that's a lot of time. And this is what I'm talking about. No easy thing to take, right? At the same time, if he goes to trial and loses, he's facing a mandatory minimum. Judge has no question, is not allowed to sentence less, and will probably sentence more than 57 years in prison. Right?
Wow.
And the client's like, I didn't do it. And I don't know, maybe did, maybe didn't. And I keep telling him, that's irrelevant, really. There is a lot of evidence against you, a lot of bad evidence.
And a lot of time at stake.
Right? And you have to convince him, it doesn't matter if you're innocent. It doesn't matter if you're guilty. That's sort of a secondary question a lot of times. And people don't understand that. And that's why people ask me sometimes, when you have a guilty client, he did X, Y, and Z. How can you defend it? I mean, the guilt or innocence doesn't even come into play that much for me. And I tell my clients a lot of time, I don't care if you did it or not.
I know a lot of other attorneys are like, don't even tell me, because it's not going to change how I'm going to represent you. It's not going to change the things that I'm going to do. And I mean, it really is. It's like a secondary, piece to the puzzle that you're trying to solve here.
Right. I mean, it's not important sometimes whether or not the person did it or not, or whether they'll admit they did it or not. You have to look at it, and you have to convince the client or show the client that what's really important is if we go to trial, it's going to be what the jury perceives of what happens. That's going to be what's important.
Not whether or
not
not
what really happened, right? If this witness who you're claiming is a big liar and you never did anything with him, he's a cooperating witness, he said you did all these 10 robberies with him, if the jury believes him, you're going to get convicted and you're going to go to prison for 57 years. If they don't, okay, maybe you won't get convicted of some of these counts. I don't know, but then there's all these other counts that you almost certainly will be, because there's DNA on a gun or whatever the case is. So sometimes, despite, I like to go to trial. I tell my clients this a lot. I love trials, right? It's when like I get to feel alive and I get to feel like all this pressure and it's great and you're staying up late at night and doing this stuff and that kind of sucks, but at the same time, it's intense, it's a rush, it's great. And I love doing it and I feel great when I do it, but you may not like the result here, and you have to think about that. And if you want to go to trial, fine. You know, we won't talk about this plea anymore, but you need to know the stakes, and you need to know that I think, even though I love to go to trial, I think this is one where you'd be better off not doing it. You know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you have that conversation, you go to trial and you win. So, I mean...
Right.
And that's what you tell the client too. You just never know what's going to happen when you go to a jury. If we take a plea, I can make you a guarantee. I can make you a promise. If we go to trial, who the heck knows, right? It depends who's going to end up in that box and what their personalities are like and what they were willing to reveal during jury selection. You could get some crazy wacko who's very influential and very convincing, and he can convince the other 11 people to do something they wouldn't have done, and he's a guy who would have convicted you right from the beginning, and he hid that from everybody in jury selection. You could have the misfortune of getting one of those people on your jury.
Yeah, and in federal cases, you don't get to choose your own jury,
it's
so
terrible.
you're stuck with like,
It's
okay, here's the 12 people.
I mean, you get some choice,
you get
but you don't get to talk to them
about them, but yeah, the extent of voir dire is not as great as it is in New York. And
And voir dire is sort of the most fun part. At first, it was terrifying.
Prying into people's lives.
At first, it was terrifying, but now prying into people's lives is the best. That's the best part.
And it also teaches you how, I guess, to pull out certain facts that may not directly say, oh, I don't think I could make a decision, but it's cutting around those facts that you know are going to help you when they're in that jury room, when they're deliberating, when they're trying to, figure out what the outcome of the case should be. And I think that's what's fun about it, is because you're really not asking the direct questions because you're not really allowed to. So you have to work around it and kind of ask, what kind of facts can I find out about you that are going to help me and make me think that you have good qualities to be a good juror in this case.
Right. I love when... And it happens in every jury selection. You get 1, 2, hopefully as many people as possible who start saying things like, well, you know what? If I was accused of this, I would testify. And if this guy doesn't, I'm going to think he's guilty. Or, I believe when there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, these police are out there. They're risking their lives. They're doing a good job. They're not going to arrest somebody for no reason. If somebody gets arrested, they must have done it. And then you could say, oh, well, that's very interesting. Tell me more about that. And I like to have them, like some people will say, oh, shut this guy down. We don't want him polluting the jury. I love it when they go on and on, because you can watch the other jurors going like, who is this guy saying that kind of thing? And people will go, I take offense to what Mr. So-and-so says.
And
the best jury selection is when you're just sort of calling on people who are raising the, ooh, can I go next? And that's the easiest one. You're like Maury Povich passing around the microphone. And that's when you just let people talk and sort of go nuts into these views. That's when you get that kind of dynamic, and that's fun. You don't get that in federal court.
Yeah, I know, but the times you do go to state court, I'm sure that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It seems like a good moment. At least you feel a connection, you feel that you know a little bit about the people that are sitting in there. So, when the case comes out and the verdict is handed, you know the background. But in a federal case, you don't know the background because you don't, like you said, there's a little questioning that's involved, but there isn't really.
But you also don't get to connect with the jurors. Like you were just saying, you connect with those jurors in the state court voir dire. And I think you get some credibility. A lot of people will try to use the voir dire as a time where they can educate the jurors, and I do that to some extent, but I never try to change people's minds. Because I think it's futile. It'll never work. People come in with their notions, and they're not going to let some guy who they never met before, they think is some scumbag defense attorney, convince them otherwise. Secondly, I think the jurors give you credibility, and the ones who end up on your juror are going to give you credibility if they just see you as somebody who's exploring their views and not trying to convince them or change their mind. When ultimately at the end, that's what you're going to try to do, is convince them, or maybe change their mind, or convince them to vote with you or to side with you. But you want to come off in the beginning as just really trying to find out about them and who they are as people, and to see whether or not they're appropriate for the case. I mean, when you go into private practice, you have a lot more considerations that you didn't have before. Before it was only about the lawyering. Now you're a business person too. And there's certain things that you have to get used to as a business person that you've never done before, maybe. I don't know, maybe you have some background in your life that you have done stuff like this, but you have to ask people for money, right? I mean, it's uncomfortable at first, right?
Right, oh yeah.
And you have to be willing to accept that you're worth this money, you know, and that your time is valuable, and you're not going to do things for free, and you're not going to get paid later, right? And you're not a bank, and you're not a credit card company. Yeah, I had recently had a client tell me, can I give you sort of part of it now and part of it later? I said, no, I'm going to need all this money up front. And he says, well, I mean, I just don't have it right now. I said, well, we take credit card. We can use it. Well, I don't have a $5,000 limit. I don't have that much limit on my credit card. I said, if Visa is not willing to give you that line of credit and they're in the business of collecting money, why would I give you that line of credit? Right? And these are the type, you have to be firm. And you have to say,
you're confronted with these exact situations.
Right, and you have to say, my time is valuable, and that's the only commodity you have when you're in a business like this, is your time. Right? And if you're just giving it away for free and you're not collecting money and you're not asking people for money that's appropriate and that's going to be worth you putting in your time, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you'll never end up making any money and you'll have to close up your shop, right? I mean, you have to be willing to do these things, and they're tough at first, but you get over it, and you can do it. But also, you have to build an image. You have to build a confidence, a reputation, and there's no tricks to doing that, really. It's just a matter of being professional, showing up on time, always returning phone calls, talking to your clients about everything, going to different bar events, talking to people, always bringing your card around, talk about your business. It's things you never did before, that never thought about, that now you really have to focus on a lot.
Well, unfortunately, it's all the time we have for today. I'm hoping that maybe we can do another segment, as we had a lot more interesting things to talk about. But this is David Fisher with Fisher
Byrialsen.
Fisher Byrialsen and Kreiser. And thanks for watching tonight.
Thank you.
So,